Benn wins a unanimous decision victory over Chris Eubank and finally gets a mark on the board for Team Benn. This fight was a very underwhelming fight compared to the first one. It didn't have the drama of the first fight. It didn't have the action of the first fight. It was more of a tactical affair. Immediately from the first round, Conor Benn was on the front foot. Chris Eubank gave up the centre of the ring without much of a fight and was using a lot of lateral movement. And if you compare this to the first round of the first fight, Eubank Jr. meets Conor Benn centre of the ring. He doesn't give it up. He's willing to be in the line of fire more and not give up the centre of the ring. But in this fight, he was just conceding the centre of the ring from the first bell, which I did find to be a little bit strange, as he didn't do that in the first fight. The first round, I actually thought the first round Chris Eubank might have won. And I know a lot of people gave the first round to Conor Benn, but actually go back and watch the round. And the only real significant punch is a right hand from Chris Eubank Jr. Forget what the commentators are saying. And that's a whole nother story within this fight. And don't get it wrong, Eubank Jr. conclusively won this fight. There's no doubt about that. Conor Benn conclusively won this fight. There's no doubt about the decision. But the first round I thought was even at best. But if you had to give it to someone, I'm going to give it to Eubank Jr. Yeah, because literally nothing really happened of any significance in that first round. The second round I gave to Conor Benn. I thought he won that round. And there were a little bit of worrying signs because it was like, it's the second round here and Eubank hasn't really shown any life, you know. And you were just kind of thinking like, is this some sort of strategy from Eubank or is there something actually wrong with him as to why he's not giving any life in this fight? And I think I gave the third or the fourth round even. And then everything after that went to Conor Benn. He conclusively won the fight. I thought Benn did look a lot better from a technical perspective in this fight. He was a lot more balanced. He was a lot more thoughtful in the way that he fought. He was a lot more efficient with his punches, Conor Benn. And that's not a word that you'd normally associate with Conor Benn because he's normally very reckless and gun-ho and just throwing all sorts of punches without giving much thought to it. And I've got to give Conor Benn's team credit because they did put in a very good game plan here. They knew that they had to make Eubank Jr. fight 3 minutes of every round because of his age and because of the fact that he's absolutely killing himself to make the weight. But they did it in a very smart way. They applied pressure to Eubank Jr. They made Eubank Jr. use his legs at a very old age. And they didn't do it in a way where they had to throw a lot of punches and exert a lot of energy themselves. So it was a very smart strategy. And Benn did execute the strategy very well. He was very composed in there. It was the most compact I've seen Conor Benn. And the most I've seen him not lose his shape. A lot of times, when you watch Conor Benn fight, he's just reckless, just throwing haymakers, losing his balance. His feet are coming on square and it's just so disjointed. He looked actually very well balanced in there for a change. So there were positives from Conor Benn, but you do have to look at who was on the other side of the ring. And Chris Eubank Jr. was as shot as a fighter as I've seen in years. The only fighter who looked even more shot than him was a 59-year-old Mike Tyson. But that's saying a lot when that's the only example I can think of. Khan looked horrible against Brook. But Eubank Jr. made Khan look like, in that Brook fight, like he had life in him. Eubank Jr. was absolutely gone. He had no punching power. He had no punch resistance. His balance was gone. His coordination was gone. And I would even say the only thing he showed was heart, but I don't know if he really even had the desire in this fight because he knew he was in such a state. I mean, that version of Eubank Jr., I'm sorry, gets beaten by most, even welterweights, top 10 welterweights. Yeah, I really think so. He had absolutely no power. I mean, he was punching like a 140-pound Paulie Malignaggi in there. I mean, Malignaggi was probably hit harder than that 160-pound version of Chris Eubank. He had absolutely no power in his shots. And not only did he not have no power, he had no snap in his shots from Eubank. I mean, he just looked horrible. And you've got to give Ben credit, but honestly, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. was just the absolute shell of himself in there. I mean, anyone who thinks otherwise is either just some sort of cheerleader for Conor Benn and Matchroom or doesn't know boxing. I mean, if you're trying to fool me and tell me that was some world-class performance, it wasn't. And look, you can't be too critical of Ben. He beat who was put in front of him, to be fair. But for Chris Eubank, you do wonder, though, that I think he might have made a mistake by going to Bomac. And I say that because Bomac and Terence Crawford train at a very high intensity. And when you're 36 years old and you're killing yourself to make weight, you can leave it in the gym. I think Chris Eubank actually needed a lot of rest for this training camp. You didn't want to go all out and leave it in the ring. And I've seen Eubank throughout his career and sparring videos of him and taking a lot of punishment. I mean, there's a video up of him sparring Carl Froch years ago, and there's another one of him sparring some Cuban guy where they're just having this savage war. And when you're having that day in, day out in multiple training camps over the years, it catches up to you. And then you're making these crazy weight cuts. I mean, the writing on the wall for Eubank was really there from the Liam Williams fight. The Liam Smith fight. He was so bad in that Liam Smith fight. In the first one I'm talking about, yeah, he won the rematch. But when someone reacts the way that Chris Eubank Jr. did in that first Liam Smith fight, yeah, there's something really off about their punch resistance. I mean, you saw Roy Jones do it towards the end of his career where they just react in this weird way and their equilibrium just goes and they're like, that isn't a reflection of someone, who's got punch resistance in them but has just got hit by a great shot. No, it's actually the opposite. I mean, even when you look at the shots that knocked Chris Eubank Jr. down, even the first knockdown, the second one, yeah, was kind of in the back of the head, but even the first one literally skims past his ear. I mean, it just shows you how fragile that Chris Eubank was. I think, yeah, he probably shouldn't have gone to Bomac. He should have gone and had a more relaxed training camp. Amir Khan kind of made that error when he fought Kell Brook, and you're just killing yourself. You're at that later age. You can't train at that intensity anymore. You just can't. You end up leaving it in the gym, and I think that's what Eubank's done. And to be honest with you, the only fight left out there for Chris Eubank is probably a Billy Joe Saunders fight. That's probably the only fight left for him, because if you're Eubank Jr. now, you probably want to fight at 168 and you want to fight someone who's equally as damaged as you. You don't want to be going around at 168. I mean, even Canelo would have too much for him. He'd blow him out of the water, in my opinion. So you'd probably want to fight Billy Joe Saunders. And I mean, I think Eubank would have a bit more strength at 68, and that's the only real logical fight out there. A guy who's also been out of the ring 5 years, a guy who's walking around at 230 pounds, bring him down to 68, make him kill himself to make the weight, and there you have it. You've got two probably equally damaged fighters, so they can go and, battle it out with each other. But that's probably the only fight left for Eubank Jr. if he did want to continue. I mean, everything else would just result in him because I mean, if he was in there with, I mean, you got to remember, he was in there with Conor Benn. I mean, if he was in there with a more I mean, could you imagine if he was in there with a Virgil Ortiz or Boots Ennis? I mean, it would have been horrific. So luckily he was in there with a Conor Benn and not one of those other guys, even those guys who were at a smaller weight division. But But yeah, Conor Benn for me, he can go on, he can challenge, go back down to 47. And I think the reason they want to go to 47 is because 54 has just got too many killers. So you go back down to 47, you fight maybe the other champions. You got Lewis Crocker, Rolly Romero, um, Mario Barrios, and the winner of Haney Norman. I think the best probably in that division will probably be the winner of Haney Norman, and that's saying something. I think, he could possibly beat Barrios, because Barrios, in my opinion, probably lost to Manny Pacquiao, who's like 46 years of age. I mean, Lewis Crocker, had a split division against Paddy Donovan. None of these guys are, in a good welterweight division, none of those guys are touching world titles. So he could potentially go down to 47 and maybe win a world title. He'd be in there with a lot more resistance than he was in against Eubank Jr, that's for sure. But he could maybe still pull it off. I think Conor Benn's an athletic guy. I think he's a game guy. I think he fights with a lot of, cojones and, a little bit like his dad. So you can't knock the guy too much. You beat what was put in front of him, but you can't go around ranting and raving about beating a Eubank Jr. that was absolutely weight trained like that. You can't. There'll probably be some PR campaign to try and make Eubank Jr., this win over Eubank Jr. look like some spectacular achievement. But let's be honest, it wasn't. He did what he had to do. He fought a very composed fight. He was very, like I said, I was impressed with Conor Benn's composure and the way he kept his shape for 12 rounds. To be fair to him, he did actually do that well. Something that I've actually never seen him do. But remember, that's a very easy thing to do when you're in there against a Eubank Jr. who is basically a dead man walking. It's another thing doing that with a live, world-class opponent. And to be fair, even in his best days, I don't think Eubank Jr. was particularly world-class. It was maybe fringe world level, and Conor Benn's probably fringe world level as well, but he's going to go back down to welterweight in a division that's absolutely terrible. So he could maybe do something. But yeah, that's pretty much all of my thoughts on the fight. We'll see where both of them go after this.